Well, welcome back to another week's analysis behind the news. A lot of talk this last week on Benghazi and the so-called email smoking gun. You're all familiar with it, I'm sure. The only one newspaper that I've seen talk about it at all was on the front page, and that's even a plus, of USA Today, but not the New York Times, not the Washington Post, etc. Silence. Even Fox, even though it brings it up, doesn't talk about certain aspects of this Benghazi attack. The Blaze, however, in the last week has been getting into more background as to what was going on. But the big question has always been, what was the ambassador doing there to begin with? Now, in the New American, for months and years, actually, we've been talking about the fact that our own people have been supplying terrorists with weapons, including those connected to Al-Qaeda. And that is what was going on in Benghazi. And so there was a retaliation against that in this terrorist attack. In other words, one terrorist group was irritated because we were supplying another terrorist group. And that sort of thing was going on. And that is what prompted the attack, and that is what the administration doesn't want the American people to know, and that is why they talk about this video having prompted this demonstration which turned into an attack. There was no demonstration, and as we know, there never was any idea of anything in the intelligence community of it being other than a terrorist attack. But it was done again in reprisal against helping other terrorists. So the question needs to be asked, what was the ambassador doing? Instead of simply, was it or was it not a terrorist attack? Did they or did they not have enough time to thwart this attack, etc.? They don't want the American people to know what caused the attack to begin with, the reasons behind it, and the complicity of our own government in supplying terrorists. There's various stripes of terrorists. They don't all get along. And that was a lot of what was behind this attack. Now we also see about, we see a lot of things about sanctions against Russia over the Ukraine. We also see where Chinese are being prosecuted or indicted or named as those who are supplying secrets, military, space exploration, rocketry, military, all sorts of different secrets to the Chinese government or to the Russians. For instance, this article in the Wall Street Journal of last Wednesday, U.S. offers bounty for Chinese businessmen. And it talks about this Chinese individual who apparently is giving a lot of these rocketry secrets to the Chinese. Well, what it doesn't say is that Lockheed and Boeing and all of these companies that have to do with aerospace are hand in glove with the Chinese. They have R&D laboratories there where they're working on joint projects to go into space and use space, rocketry and everything else. They don't want the American people to know that our own government is allowing these multinational companies to give all these secrets or even develop secrets with these communist states. And so they point the finger at some Chinese guy or something like that without pointing the finger to Boeing or Lockheed, where they are cooperating in these joint space ventures. And so it's become a serious problem in that regard. I mean, how can you develop rocketry with the Russians and with the Chinese and not keep things from them? It doesn't work that way. They're getting, I mean, we're giving them the whole thing. We're not even just giving it to them, we're developing them, developing these plans with them, at any rate. Another thing that is very interesting in regard to all these sanctions is that, as we've pointed out before on these programs, Merkel, who is Chancellor of Germany, is a former leader in the Communist Party. She's now some sort of a conservative, you see. But we also note that in the Wall Street Journal of last Wednesday again, that the former chancellor before Merkel, Schrader, went to Moscow to celebrate his birthday with Putin. Now, that's a little bit of a comradeship, wouldn't you think? So here we have Merkel, current chancellor of Germany, former communist leader. We have Schrader, who celebrates his birthday with Putin in Moscow. And then you wonder why they come out in the Wall Street Journal and say that corporate Germany actually opposes increasing sanctions against Russia. Well, these sanctions are a joke to begin with. We're going to ban a couple of dozen people from traveling to the United States. Oh, that's really going to hurt them, isn't it? But they never really do anything that's going to hurt them, and they never do anything that's going to hurt the multinational corporations that are doing business with Russia. If you go to a website called U.S.-Russia Business Council, you can find that at usrbc.org. And you'll find a list of American companies that are promoting the doing business with Russia. And these businesses don't just promote it, they are heavily engaged in doing business in Russia. You've got things like Alcoa, Apple, Bank of America, Exxon Mobil, General Electric, Google, you've got Boeing, Chevron, John Deere, J.P. Morgan, and I could spend, I mean, there's 100 names here of huge corporations doing business with Russia. And we've talked before that H.W. Bush and W. Bush and Clinton, all three of them, signed agreements with Putin as a signatory that we would integrate our economies. And that's what they say. They would integrate our economies. These are very obscure agreements. They didn't pass Congress because they were never put before Congress. But the heads of our country, the two Bushes and Clinton, together with Putin, agreed that we would integrate our economy. If you go online and start to look at the business deals, the manufacturing that's going on, the R&D that's going on between these major corporations inside Russia and inside China, you get a very good sense that, yes, we are integrating our economy. And it's becoming quite a situation and very alarming. So do you think for a moment that an Obama particularly would have sanctions against Russia over the Ukraine when these companies are so integrated with the Russian economy? What kind of pressure is going to be brought to bear on our administration by the Council on Foreign Relations and these sorts of organizations that are doing business there? And by the way, many of them are corporate members of the Council on Foreign Relations, like Boeing and others, J.P. Morgan and such. Lastly, just wanted to show you that all of this, we've been saying, all of this is show business in the Ukraine. And once in a while, if you know the background of certain things, you can see messages that are put out there for the communists to recognize very readily, and the average citizen can't see it because he's not attuned to it. It gets back to that old thing about those line drawings of the forest or the jungle when you were a child, and you were asked to pick out the lion and the tiger and the bear in the foliage, and you couldn't see it at first until your brain had a shift, and you could start to see, well, maybe that looks like an ear, and that looks like a nose and an eye, and so forth. And suddenly, yeah, that's a bear, or that's a lion, and that's a camel, or what have you. And once your brain is attuned to that, you start to recognize it. Well, there's certain things like that that occur in the newspapers and on television that the average citizen can't see, but stand out like a sore thumb to those of us who recognize what they're doing. Probably the most famous that ever occurred was, and I've only got a reproduction of it. I've got the original, but I don't like to dig it out of the files. And this is the People's World communist newspaper back in July 11 of 1964. And it has a shot of Barry Goldwater giving the communist salute at the National Convention of the Republican Party. Now, he never did this. This is what we would call Photoshop today. The arm was put up there on Barry Goldwater to make it look like he was giving a communist salute. The caption is very interesting. It says underneath it, Barry Goldwater, the real situation. The real situation. So they were basically sending a message out to their minions through their official communist newspaper saying, don't worry about Barry Goldwater. We've got the situation in hand. He looks like a real threat, but he basically, as we discovered, he was surrounded by these people to neutralize him without them knowing it. I saw it on a local scale where they came in and ingratiated themselves into the Goldwater campaign. Later on, we found out they weren't for Barry Goldwater at all. They were trying to scuttle a campaign. The latest one that I've seen of this nature was Friday, a couple of weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal. And here is a newspaper, and I think I may have showed this to you before, but I wanted to spend a little more time explaining it. And the caption shows pro-Ukrainian people working, but the tattoos on their hands are hammers and sickle. In other words, they're letting the communists in this country know that this is all phony. Communists on both sides. Till next week. We'll see you then.